I want to welcome everybody this morning. This is kind of an important day in the history of Rutherford County, and I think it's important because there's a lot of talk about this old sycamore tree that we know is at least 176 years old, according to Greg Tucker, our historian. There he is, and Commissioner Pettis Reed, part of the Historical Society, and Dr. John Lodell here. Thank you for being here. This tree, I'm not going to get into this, but this tree was brought to the square by Alfred Miller. I think I'm saying that right, am I not, Eddie?
That's correct.
About 176 years ago. And so we want to talk about the importance of this tree as it relates to the memories. So I'm not going to speak very long, but I just wanted to recognize the significance of the tree as it relates to the memories that it holds. And this is a transition period. So while we're cutting the tree down today for public safety reasons, it has died, it's completely hollowed out. It's also a transition point. And so with that, we're going to have three speakers speak about the relevance and importance, and then we'll cut the tree here shortly. But right now I want to introduce our Rutherford County historian, Greg Tucker. Greg, come on up and share with us your thoughts, please, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. About 180 years ago, a seed fell from a sycamore tree down along the west fork of the Stones River. It sprouted and began to grow. This could be a very long discussion. But what I've decided to do, I'm going to leave the familiar details of the history of the tree to my cousin over here, Eddie Miller. I wanted to focus on a couple of points, facts, that are not commonly known. 4 trees were delivered up this way and planted, one on each corner of the square. 3 of them died. Our friend here was the survivor. What some don't know, though, is that 3 poplars were planted where those had died, and the 3 poplars died. What we have learned many, many years later, back in the 1970s, a detailed architectural study was done on the building and the immediate surroundings. Found evidence indicating that a cistern was built many, many years ago on the square, probably in about the same period that the first and second courthouses were built. The cistern, of course, was intended to capture and retain rainwater for other uses. You know where that cistern was? And probably still is, something of it, right off the southeast corner of the square, now partially under the building where the building's been extended. You think maybe the survivor here got access to water not available to others? It's very likely, very likely. I say survivor, and it certainly is that. Not only did it survive the need for water, but it survived the Civil War, when on 2 occasions it was in the direct line of friendly fire. The first we're all familiar with. Forrest comes charging down East Main with his contingent, firing small weapons, small arms, pistols and rifles, and got return fire from the Yankees that were in possession at the time. Guess who was right in the middle of it and survived it? That, of course, was small arms, but a lot of lead was in the air, and I'm willing to bet if we took the time, we could do a little bit of lead out of this old tree back behind us. The second is not given much play in our history books because it was one of Forrest's worst defeats. Forrest in 1864 decided to make one more attempt to liberate Murfreesboro. He had some captured Yankee cannon, artillery, he set up to the southeast, and at the given time fired a volley from the southeast into the courthouse. Well, look who's standing on the southeast corner of the courthouse. We know nominal damage was done to the courthouse. As a kid, I was told many times and pointed out the damage done to the courthouse where they repaired the bricks. All of that now is hidden by the addition on the south side. But all of that had to have come through our friend right here behind us. So twice exposed to friendly fire, and as before, a survivor. In 2023, the courthouse Sycamore was recognized by the Rutherford County Historic Society for its contribution to the preservation and educational mission of the society. For generations, the tree has reminded us of the length and breadth of our local history. The only time the Historical Society has recognized something other than a person, our first and only plant recognition. But all things that live must eventually die. Let this be a celebration of a unique and singular life, not a grievance. To paraphrase Joyce Kilmer, speeches are made by fools like me, but only God can make a tree. Thank you.
Before I introduce Chairman Pettis Reed as part of the Historical Society, I was missing something. I want to recognize Commissioner Anthony Johnston for being with us this morning. Thank you, Commissioner, and Commissioner Alan McAdoo in the back there. Thank you, Commissioner, for joining us this morning. And for those in attendance, I very much appreciate this. But at this time, I'm going to ask Pettis to come as part of the Historical Society to share with his thoughts, if you don't mind, Pettis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. You know, it's always good to follow Greg Tucker. I never like to go before him because he has the capability of correcting everything I say that's make it historically correct. But this morning, I come to you representing the Rutherford County Historical Society. And yes, last year we recognized this tree. We recognized it usually in a place where we recognize a human being for their contributions to Rutherford County. But we're sitting in a committee, and Greg even mentioned the tree. He said, why don't we recognize the tree on the courthouse square? And we said, why not? That it's witnessed so much more than anybody in this county over the 180 years it's been there. It's witnessed war. It's witnessed a lot of happy times. No telling how many people have had weddings under this tree or gotten married under this tree. It's seen generals. It's had General Douglas MacArthur come around it. Garfield, who later became president, was right here during the Battle of Murfreesboro and later became a part of the army that was located here. So this tree has witnessed so much from Rutherford County, and we were glad to recognize it by the Rutherford County Historical Society. But what I would like to say this morning on behalf of the Rutherford County Historical Society, I wish to thank our mayor and his committee who spent hours and a lot of time trying and worrying about this tree, of trying to save it, of trying to keep it healthy, of trying to keep it a part of Rutherford County just a little bit longer. But you know, just like any living thing, it only has so far that it can go. And it's given us a whole lot for 180 years. A lot of people has appreciated this tree, but I don't know if you've noticed something this morning. Yes, we're getting ready to cut it down today. We're getting ready to remove it from the, I guess you could say, the landscape of Rutherford County that we have here. But it doesn't go away easily. If you'll look at it right now, I come out here this morning to make a picture of it. Its branches have formed a perfect V for victory. And I think that's what this old tree is telling us. I've been here this long, and I've been here as the sentinel of Rutherford County. I've stood guard over the county seat, the courthouse. And I want to say thank you to the mayor and his committee who have promised that they're going to bring us another tree back. We'll start with a young sentinel doing the same thing that's happened here. But we should think of the honor that this old tree has given us. It's given us the sign of victory, that's what Rutherford County is all about. This tree has weathered a war. It has weathered storms. It's weathered violence. It's weathered happiness, it's weathered a lot of things. And that's what Rutherford County is. This is a county that has been a part of so many people's lives. Now it's dealing with a lot of different other things. A lot of things that deals with our modern situations that we have here. And I'm here today on behalf of the Rutherford County Historical Society to say thank you. If we can recognize it for what it's done over the years, we can recognize it and say thank you, tree, for what you have done for us here in Rutherford County. And just like that tree, Rutherford County will take the same process of saying victory for what's going on here in this county. Mayor?
Thank you, Pettis. I think your and Greg's remarks are spot on because this is, like I said, this is a transition point, and what this tree represents is the memories, and how the tree got here, of course, is really important because it's the genesis of how we're going to memorialize those memories, and I'm going to speak to that in a minute. But you know, Eddie Miller and his family, and Elam and his brother Bill, were obviously a central part of their family, was a central part of that. And Eddie, I want you and your family to come up because you know the tree wouldn't be here were it not for your how many great grandfathers? 3 or 4 great grandfathers. It's a ways back, and it just shows you the resiliency of of your family and the tree and the county, which is what Pettis and Greg are talking about. And so please come up and just share your thoughts and represent your family, and just thank you to Alfred for bringing this tree to the county. And I'm going to talk about in a few minutes how this is going to live on. But thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I'm Eddie Miller, and I'm the great-great-grandson of Alfred Miller, one of the original planters of this grand old tree behind us. And so the family lore goes that around 1848, Alfred and one of his buddies were fishing along the banks of the Stones River on his farm down the Shelbyville Highway, and they saw some sycamore saplings growing, and they decided that they would get some and replant them up here on the courthouse. So they dug up 4, as we've already discussed earlier, and brought them up here along with some other family members and planted 1 on each corner of the courthouse. 176 years later, here we are standing today with the last remaining member of those 4 trees. For many generations, this tree has always been like an old grandfather to our family. Anytime, personally, when I get on the square, when I get on this side of the square, I feel drawn to come over here, and you know, I want to come up and I want to hug the tree. I've got to touch the tree. Again, it's just like a grandfather to our family, and we're going to miss this old tree. One of the fond memories that I have was back in 2008. My father, Ebby Miller, and his brothers, Brad Miller and Billy Miller, at the invitation of Greg Tucker, came up here for a ceremony, and they measured the circumference around the tree. And how big was it, Greg?
16.5 feet.
16 and a half feet around this tree. So I can remember that day well, and that was very, very fun. Another great memory that I have was maybe 10 years ago. We have our family reconnected with some other Millers that have been living down in Jacksonville, Florida for 125 years. And with this reconnection, they came up here to visit. So we brought them up to the tree to see the tree. And one of those cousins was Alfred Miller the 5th. He has a grandson that's Alfred Miller the 7th. So that's very meaningful to us. The Miller family owes a huge debt of gratitude to Mayor Joe Carr, the county commissioners, the staff, and the citizens of Rutherford County for their great, loving stewardship of this grand oak tree right here. But the greatest gift that this tree has given us is creating and protecting all the happiness and fellowship that has occurred under its limbs during probably hundreds, if not thousands, of gatherings over its 176 years. I say, hear, hear to our grandest ambassador.
Thank you, Eddie, and that is so true. And I think our last speaker, Bart Walker from WGNS, is going to join us. And I hope you touch on, Bart. There have been, as Pettis, Commissioner Reed, and Greg Tucker have mentioned, there have been some monumental occasions surrounding this tree. General Douglas MacArthur, the raid for Nathan Bedford Forrest, and there have been a number of occasions. But I hope you, come on up, Bart, but I hope what Bart references, I'm putting you on the spot, is some of the more obscure occasions that have happened. Maybe the proposals and the moments that many families in this county have shared. So, Bart, I'll leave that to you, and I hope I haven't stepped on your toes.
We'll go back to the early days. But there have been a lot of interesting things happening here. And I think one of the interesting things, it's bringing people together. This tree has brought so many people together. But one family that came across from right over there, down this sidewalk, in this door, probably on a daily basis, was Herschel and Charlie Mullins. They walked right past that tree every day. Why were they coming here to the courthouse? They maintained the clock up on the cupola. It's not the same clock that's up there now, but the same clock is in this museum. If you haven't been in the museum, you need to check that clock out. That was a job to get that working and keep it working, especially in those days. You can remember not too many years, it was probably really quite a few years ago, but time does fly, when we were having real problems with pigeons on the square. You remember pigeons? Well, those pigeons would get in the clock, and they would stop the clock, and the Mullins would have to come and make sure the clock was working properly and get it going again. The pigeons continued to be with us. We had the opportunity to visit the cupola because we broadcast now the cupola, the clock chiming on the hour on the way we put it on the radio. So I wanted to see where that was coming from, and we went up there. Ben Mankin took us up there, and it's amazing. First of all, it looks big on the outside. It looks bigger on the inside. It's a big room, several stories tall. We climbed on up the ladder into the very top of the cupola, and it was so dark you had to have a flashlight. So that's how big that cupola is. John Mankin, former, they weren't called county mayors, it was the county judge. County executive. He came up with the idea, I don't think he ever finished the idea, of people coming up here and shooting the pigeons. And I don't think happened, but it may have happened in the wee small hours of the morning. We're getting some noddings of yes, maybe it did happen. So that's one thing. There were other things that this tree saw, things that it's hard to believe. If you tried these things today, you'd probably end up in 940 New Salem over there, the county jail. Saturdays in the evening hours, this is in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, people would come up here on the square and do their shopping. They'd come in from the rural areas, shop, and as it got darker, and the stores stayed open, by the way, they would just start mingling with friends and talking. And there weren't any comfortable chairs to sit in. So what did they do? There were cars parked on the square. If the doors were unlocked, they sat in the cars. Didn't have to be their car. They just sat there and talked with each other about it. That's a kindler and gentler time. Fascinating to see people doing that. There was another time that this guy, during hard times, was needing to make some money, and he was going around. A lot of people went around and did circus acts and things of that sort. He was called the human fly. You've heard that story, I guess. He climbed to the top of the courthouse, right in front of this sycamore tree. This tree has seen everything. And on the way down, it started raining in the slippery courthouse. He slipped and fell to his death. Woodfin and Moore Funeral Home was right over there, and they were trying to identify who this guy is. So they put him in the showroom of their funeral home. Nobody knew who it was. He was never identified. In fact, he's buried over in Evergreen in an unmarked grave. I hope, Greg, you're not having a coronary over you. Hope this is sort of accurate. But they're Greg is our source of information a lot of times, and sometimes I need to ask him before I share the information. CBR Net did an interesting job. He brought all this to life. I was around in a time that we were able to meet these people who are the history in this community. But this sycamore tree has seen all of these things. And I think it's very appropriate that we today, as we near the milestone of 176 years of having this tree protect us, shelter us. It's seen so much, from the Civil War to today, to weddings, to whittlers, to Uncle Dave. Uncle Dave came here to the square on a regular basis, but his was a little different. He did not want to drive cars and trucks because that put him out of business. His main business was a mule-drawn wagon that took merchandise between Murfreesboro and Woodbury. So he was really against any motorized vehicles. He was a superstar and had to get to the Grand Ole Opry, but he didn't want to drive there, so he'd come uptown, get on a Greyhound bus, and ride to Nashville. But he shared all of these stories and fun times and stories and wrote songs right here on this particular spot under the sycamore tree. So those were some good memories, and some good memories that this sycamore has done. Thank you for your family's involvement in giving us this history that we've all enjoyed and loved. And thank you for keeping it alive and for helping us to hopefully replace it with one of its kin, and that makes it even better. Thank you.
So Bart's final comments were appropriate for where I want to conclude. Again, thank you, Eddie, Elam, and Bill for being here, the Miller family. Thank you very much. So this is a transition point. I want to thank publicly Jack Carter, who does a wonderful job with the courthouse landscaping. After we spent a considerable amount of money, thanks to the commission, to try to save the tree. Of course, you know that this past winter we had some significantly sub-zero weather that shocked the tree, and the old man just was not able to recover. However, we had the foresight, thanks to the county commission, we had the foresight to realize that there was a time coming where we would have to remove the tree for safety reasons. And so Jack Carter, our landscaper, has been taking cuttings from this tree, which is a genetically identical material. And the plan is to, we've got those cuttings. I think that Jack told me he did about a dozen cuttings, and 8 of them, as I understand it, have already developed a root system. So at the appropriate time, maybe in a half a dozen or 8 years, we want to bring back a DNA identical tree to that particular location. And indeed, if the opportunity presents itself, maybe, Pettis, we go to the Four Corners again like it was originally. But that's a decision for another county commission and another mayor to make. We just want to give them those options. So this is a transition point. Yeah, we're removing a tree today, but its legacy will continue with the exact DNA makeup. So for generations to come, those memories can continue here as they have 176 years before. So I thank you for coming out today. Thanks to the Miller family for being here. Thank you, Pettis. Thank you, Greg and Bart, and the commissioners for showing up. And and when we conclude, I would like for the speakers and the two commissioners to come up. We're going to have a picture, and then we'll begin the process of that transition. Thank you very much, and God bless.